Princess Charlotte did something amazing at a ceremony for soldiers who died. She touched everyone's hearts by bowing her head. Even the king got emotional. The details of this touching moment left people amazed. What started as a sad tribute, two heroes became an unforgettable royal moment. That day, Princess Kate was standing in front of her mirror at Windsor Castle, smoothing out the black dress she had chosen carefully. She looked like a woman who had gotten used to being royal, but today felt different from other royal duties. This one was more important. 3 weeks before, an invitation had arrived with fancy writing like all royal events have. It was for a private ceremony honoring soldiers who had died. It was very rare for the royal family to attend such a private memorial. Kate had read the family's letters at night. They stayed with her, each letter telling a story of loss and bravery. Before leaving, Kate looked in the mirror one more time because she knew her being there would mean a lot to the families who were still grieving. Emma, her helper, smiled and stood quietly next to her. She said, "Your Royal Highness, the car is ready when you are." Kate nodded and left. She only wore her wedding ring and pearl earrings that Princess Diana used to own. It took about 20 minutes to drive to the memorial garden. Kate sat quietly watching Windsor life go by outside the windows. At the memorial, the event organizer gave her a quick overview of the families she would meet. Mrs. Henderson had lost her 19-year-old son just a few weeks after he was sent to Afghanistan. The Patel's daughter, who was a field medic, died while helping civilians. Also, the Morrison family lost a father who died protecting a school from an attack, leaving behind 3 young kids. Kate took her time walking around the garden, looking at how thoughtfully it was designed. Each fallen soldier was honored with a white rose next to a small sign with their name, age, and a few words about their service. Each fallen soldier was honored with a white rose placed next to a small sign with their name, age, and a few words about their service. There were no loud speeches, just the respect they deserved. Soon, the families arrived. Some carried framed photos, while others held folded letters. One child held a small toy airplane. Mrs. Dot Henderson was the first to talk to Kate. Her gray hair was neatly pulled back, and she held a photo of her son in his army uniform. She smiled softly, though her eyes looked heavy with sadness. "Your Royal Highness," she said gently. "Thank you for being here." David would have been proud. Kate reached for her hands, squeezing them warmly. "Mrs. Henderson, your son gave everything for our country. It's my honor to be here. It's the least I can do." Her son had given everything for his country. The least she could do, Kate thought, was be there to honor his memory. The older woman's eyes filled with emotion as Kate squeezed her hands once more before quietly moving on to meet the next family as she met others. Each shared something different. Notes, drawings, all the small things that made it feel like their loved ones were with them again, even if just for a moment. The meaning behind each item broke Kate's heart. The sadness was already so heavy she couldn't imagine it getting worse. Every meeting was deeply personal, but carried the same feelings of love, sorrow, and pride. The Patels showed Kate the letters their daughter had sent from overseas. Filled with stories of saving lives and helping the wounded, the Morrison children, just 6, 8, and 10 years old, brought drawings of their father in his military uniform. The youngest had written in crayon at the bottom, "My daddy is a hero." As the ceremony time got closer, Kate noticed several black cars pulling into the driveway. The king had arrived, along with other important members of the royal family. For such a personal event, having this many royals there was rare and deeply meaningful. The day would start with speeches from relatives, then the quiet laying of flowers and a moment of silence. Kate had been asked to speak briefly, talking about the power of remembering and the lives behind each name. She had spent days preparing, reading over every word. But now, after looking into the eyes of these families, she wondered if her words could ever truly match the weight of what they had been through. Still, they had trusted her with their pain, and she had no intention of letting them down. Guests began taking their seats as quiet settled over the garden. Kate said a quiet prayer for strength, not knowing that in just a short while she would be part of a moment that would touch hearts far beyond Windsor. A single trumpet began to play, its clear, sad notes floating over the gathering and setting the serious tone. Kate stood next to the royal family, as the families of the fallen slowly found their seats. The first to speak was Colonel Matthews, a decorated officer who had served alongside many of those being honored. His voice was calm but touched with sadness as he spoke of duty, friendship, and the bonds formed in hardship. Kate listened carefully, though her eyes often looked at the families sitting in front of her. When the colonel stepped down, it was the family's turn to speak. Mrs. Henderson walked to the small podium. Her steps were slow. Her hands shook slightly as she unfolded her speech, but her voice was steady. David always wanted to help people, she began softly. Even as a little boy, he would bring home hurt birds and try to save them. So, when he said he wanted to join the military, I wasn't surprised. He wanted to make the world better. Kate felt her chest tighten. Mrs. Henderson went on to describe the children David had met overseas and how he had spent his own money on school supplies for them. She stood tall, her grief hidden under amazing composure. He died doing what he believed was right, she finished. And though my heart is broken, I'm proud of the man he became. He lived with purpose. That's all a mother could hope for. A heavy silence followed, thick with emotion. The weight of the moment was felt by everyone. Tissues were quietly pulled from pockets and purses. Even the royal security officers, usually stone-faced, looked teary-eyed behind their sunglasses. There was already so much sadness in the air. But this was only the beginning. The next speaker, Priya Patel, was the younger sister of a fallen medic. Barely in her 20s, she had dark eyes, bright with emotion, as she stepped toward the podium. Kate immediately noticed she looked like the framed photo of her late sister Mira displayed on the memorial table. My sister Mira always knew she wanted to help people, Priya began, stopping to swallow the lump in her throat. From a young age, she dreamed of becoming a doctor. Joining the army gave her that purpose and a chance to give back. She spoke of Mira's letters home, filled with stories of those she had treated. Hurt soldiers, scared children, even elderly civilians with nowhere else to turn. She used to say that even in war, even in the darkest corners of the world, there was always a bit of hope, Priya continued. She believed that healing someone was a way of reminding them that life still had meaning. Her words had the crowd in tears, but they weren't the most moving of the day. The next speech would become what many later described as the most difficult moment of the morning. Sarah Morrison, widow of Staff Sergeant Tom Morrison, walked to the podium. Small and quiet, she carried herself with dignity as her 3 children, aged 6, 8, and 10, watched from the front row. Tom always told our children that the greatest job in the world was keeping others safe, Sarah began, her voice low but clear enough to hear. He believed that every child, no matter where they came from, deserved a chance to live, to learn, and to feel protected. She paused, her lips shaking before continuing. When he died, protecting a school from harm, he wasn't just wearing a uniform. He was keeping a promise to us, to those children, and to the world. Kate blinked back tears. Sarah's words were full of love and courage. Our children know their daddy is gone, Sarah went on, but they also know he was a hero. They understand that somewhere in the world, other children are alive today because of their father. By now, there wasn't a dry eye anywhere. Even members of the royal family sitting nearby wiped at their eyes. The Queen, usually composed, beyond question, stayed still, her expression serious, but clearly moved. Out of the corner of her eye, Kate noticed Princess Charlotte, her small frame sitting straight, but her face filled with sorrow. But it was the simple gesture that followed which caught everyone's attention. Charlotte bowed her head. She did it without looking at her mother or anyone else. The gesture was so natural that it sent a wave of emotion through the crowd. Kate knew better than anyone that Charlotte was deeply moved by the sadness in Sarah's words. The king leaned forward slightly, also clearly affected by the sadness. In the quiet, Charlotte's bowed head became a quiet symbol of respect and caring, warming the hearts of the families there. What happens next? Stay with us to find out. After that, the flower laying ceremony began. Each family had prepared a simple tribute of white roses with fresh greenery and a ribbon carefully written with the name of their loved one. Mrs. Henderson stepped forward first, kneeling briefly in front of her son's sign and resting her fingers gently on his name before placing the flowers. The Patel family followed, with Priya laying the flowers while her parents stood beside her. When it was the Morrison family's turn, Kate's breath caught in her throat. The children walked alongside their mother, each carrying a part of the flower arrangement. Together, they set it at the foot of their father's memorial sign. Kate's eyes followed the youngest boy as he broke away from the group, reaching out with small fingers to touch his father's carved name. A hush fell over the crowd, and a soft murmur of emotion swept through the garden. Then it was the royal family's turn. Kate stepped forward with her flowers, simple yet beautiful. As she got close to the memorial wall, she paused at each name. These weren't strangers. They were mothers and fathers, sons and daughters, real people who had given everything. The ceremony ended with 2 minutes of silence, broken only by the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Kate stood with her head bowed. Thinking about the stories she had heard and the families she had met, she felt deep gratitude for the sacrifices these soldiers had made and deep respect for the families learning to live with their loss. As the silence ended, Kate looked up to find the king watching her with an expression of approval and understanding. She realized that this day was about more than honoring the fallen Dot. It was about showing these families that their sacrifice mattered to the entire country. The formal part of the day was over, but Kate knew the most important moments were still ahead. The families would want time at the memorial to share memories and comfort one another. She planned to spend the rest of the morning with them, listening to their stories and offering what support she could. As the crowd began to spread out, she noticed many families forming small groups, speaking quietly together. For some, it was the first time meeting others who truly understood their loss. The ceremony had created a community connected by shared grief and mutual support. Kate decided to meet with each family, determined they would know their loved ones were remembered, not just as names on a wall, but as unique individuals who had touched lives. Kate went to the Morrison family first, drawn by the sight of the 3 young children who were now playing quietly near their father's memorial sign. The youngest, Tommy, was tracing the letters of his father's name with his small finger, while his older siblings, Emma and Jake, stood protectively beside him. Their mother, Sarah, watched with a mix of pride and heartbreak. "Tommy understands that his daddy is a hero," Sarah said softly as Kate joined them. "But he still asks when daddy is coming home. It's the hardest question to answer." Kate knelt to Tommy's level, her formal dress touching the grass as she spoke to the little boy. "Your daddy was very brave," she said gently. "He helped keep other children safe, just like he kept you safe when he was here with you." Tommy looked up at Kate with wide, serious eyes. "Mommy says, Daddy is watching us from heaven. Do you think he can see us now?" Kate felt her heart squeeze at the innocent question. "I think your daddy is always with you, Tommy. Every time you're kind to someone or help someone who needs it, you're just like your daddy." The boy seemed to think about this, then nodded before returning his attention to the memorial sign. Kate stood and placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder, offering support as they watched the children deal with their grief in their own way. Kate then turned her attention to the Patel family, who were gathered around a small display of photos Priya had brought. The images showed Mira's life as a young girl in a school uniform, graduating from medical training, and in her final picture, proudly wearing her army uniform with a bright smile. The family took turns sharing memories, and Kate was welcome to listen. "Mira was always the one who took care of everyone," said Priya's mother, Sunita. "When she was little, she would play doctor with her dolls, always trying to make them better. We thought it was just a game, but she was already showing us the person she was meant to become." Priya's father, Raj, added, "She wrote to us about the children she treated overseas. She said watching them get better gave her the strength to keep going. Even in such difficult conditions, she found joy in helping others heal." Kate listened closely as each family member spoke, understanding that sharing these stories was an important part of their healing. The Patels had traveled from London for the ceremony, and Kate learned this was their first time visiting a memorial for their daughter. They had needed time to grieve in private before they could face such a public recognition of their loss. Still, Kate found her conversation with Mrs. Henderson to be the most moving. The older woman had brought a box of her late son, David's letters, and showed Kate some of the photos he had included. They showed David in Afghanistan playing soccer with local children using a makeshift ball, sharing his food with families who had lost their homes, and working alongside local volunteers to build a small school. "He never wrote about the dangerous parts," Mrs. Henderson explained, her hands tenderly holding the treasured letters. "He only told me about the good things he was doing, the people he was helping. I didn't learn about the risks he faced until after he was gone." Kate studied the pictures, noticing the real joy on David's face as he played with the children. "He looks happy in these pictures," she said, as if he knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. Mrs. Henderson smiled through her tears. That's exactly who he was. David never did anything halfway. When he committed to helping people, he gave everything he had. Kate noticed, with some surprise, that the king had stayed at the ceremony longer than expected, quietly speaking with several family members. The king's presence meant the world to these families, and Kate could see how much comfort it brought them to know their sacrifice was being honored at the highest level. As the morning went on, Kate became deeply involved in conversations with the families. She learned about David Henderson's love for music and how he had taught local children to play simple instruments made from recycled materials. She heard of Mira Patel's dream to open a medical clinic in her hometown after finishing her military service. She discovered that Tom Morrison had planned to become a teacher upon returning from deployment. Inspired by his work helping to rebuild schools overseas, these weren't just soldiers who had died in service. They were people with dreams, plans, and lasting connections to the communities they had served. Each story Kate heard deepened her understanding of what sacrifice truly meant. But this wasn't the day's most meaningful moment. That came when Kate realized that several families were making plans to stay connected. The ceremony had created bonds between people who understood each other's loss in ways no one else could. Mrs. Henderson exchanged contact information with Sarah Morrison, offering to help with the children whenever needed. The Patel family spoke about visiting the Morrisons in their hometown, building a network of support that would reach far beyond this single day. Kate understood this was perhaps the most meaningful result of the ceremony. If you line up the royal families of the past beside the one we see today, the difference in parenting style is almost like flipping to a completely new book. Today, things look very different. Prince George, Princess Charlotte are often seen in more relaxed settings. We've watched them play, argue like siblings do, giggle at public events, and even wave confidently to the crowd. These moments are part of a new pattern where warmth and relatability matter just as much as rules. The old way says duty above all else. Royal children were raised to serve, and their personalities often came second to their titles. But William and Kate have rewritten that playbook. Their children are still being prepared for responsibility, especially George. But they're also being encouraged to grow into themselves, to understand their place in the world without being overwhelmed by it. The public has noticed. In the past, royals were often seen as distant figures hiding behind palace gates. But now, the growing love toward the Wales family has a lot to do with their visibility and humanity. William and Kate haven't given up tradition, but they've softened its sharp edges. That balance of grace and openness has reshaped the monarchy's reputation, especially among younger generations. It also matters for the future. Prince George will one day wear the crown, but he's being raised to understand not just how to lead, but how to listen. He's being prepared as a modern monarch, compassionate, emotionally present, and aware of the world beyond palace walls. Charlotte and Louis, meanwhile, are growing up in an environment that allows them to be seen as more than just royal backups. As the sun reached its peak, Kate felt its warmth on her face, and her thoughts turned to her own children. Princess Charlotte, now known for her composure at public events, often reminded Kate of herself at that age, though with even greater confidence. Recently, Charlotte had taken part in her first solo charity event, helping to pack aid boxes for underprivileged children. Kate had been deeply touched by the way her daughter bowed her head during the moment of silence, showing the same seriousness and respect that filled the day. It reminded Kate that the values honored here, courage, service, and compassion, were the same ones she hoped to pass on to her children. Looking at the families gathered before her, she knew this day wasn't an ending, but a beginning, a continuation of love, community, and strength. Stepping back quietly to give the families their space, Kate carried their stories in her heart, just like the names carved on the memorial wall, never to be forgotten. We'd love to hear from you. What would you like to say to the royal family and to the brave heroes we honor today? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you appreciated this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click the next video on your screen for more you'll enjoy.